Hi, and welcome to Freshwaves. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and today on Freshwaves, we've got an amazing guest, Mr. Frank Di Genova. Frank, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm well, thanks, and how are you?
I'm great, thank you. So nice to have you on board. On Fresh Waves. It's been a few years since we've chatted. In real life, we chat all the time. But I'm going to stay away from your professional titles today. We're not going to talk about hairdressing, and you're a hairdresser. We're not going to talk about your upcoming book. That'll be another show. You are an author. And we are going to stick to a subject that is so true to so many of us these days, self-motivation. I think we live now in a world that is full of distractions. For example, I get up from the table in the kitchen to go into the pantry to grab more napkins. When I arrive in the pantry, I see a bag of popcorn. I think, popcorn, need to write down more popcorn on my grocery list. I leave the pantry, I go to the grocery list, I write down the popcorn and then think, I should add X, 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 and X. Then I think, but I'm not really sure which one of those I want. So I pick up my tablet and I say, okay, let's research dog food. Which is the best one to get? Oh no. Oh, gee, raw dog food? Oh, maybe I should listen to a Fresh Waves podcast about raw dog food like we did last week. Anyway, before you know it, I completely forget why I got up from the table. The food that I was eating is stone cold, and an hour and a half of time has gone by. These are the distractions that grab us every single day. And if you're trying to be a writer or an entrepreneur and have your own business, it's really important to figure out how to get rid of these distractions, how to stay on track, and how to get things done. Am I right, Frank?
I was smiling when you were saying those things. I'm like, I can relate so much. Now, I have found with myself that it depends. Now, I'm in the last stretch of getting said book ready, and I'm so laser focused right now because I know that there's a deadline that I imposed on myself. So it took me about a year to write this book, a little bit of experiential writing before. So I'm going to say it's about a year. And the exact things that you were saying arose that I would just, the popcorn, the food, let me look this up, and it leads you to something else. And you're in a rabbit hole that is like, where did the 2 hours go by? And I find that happens when you don't have the guillotine looming over your head. So it's almost like a subconscious kind of safety valve or purge valve. But what is, now that I'm in this phase of motivating myself to getting some things done, everything else is neglected. Like, I don't want to have any visitors to the house because, I neglect everything else. So it's the opposite now of what I'm doing. I can relate. That was a long story short. So yeah, I can relate.
Well, a Fresh Waves friend, Shannon Leahy, who is a Canadian author, she always says there's nothing that gets her done more than a looming deadline. And you made an interesting point. Your deadline is self-imposed. You've decided that you want to get something done by a specific date. So doesn't that lead us in the direction of setting goals for ourselves?
Yes. Now, I'd like to add that about this time last year, I was speaking with a potential editor, and we were recommended from a friend. And she was saying, I need your manuscript in by April because I'm going to the cottage. And I thought to myself, because my first two books I wanted to get them out as fast as I could just because I wanted to write a book, especially the first one. The second one, a little bit, more patient. And when she said this to me for my third book, I'm saying, no way. Like, you're telling me now, this is my baby. I'm going to get it done when it's done. And I thought, unless you're like a Hay House or Penguin or any big publishing, unless they would come knocking, I would have said, okay, I'll get the manuscript done. But I'm saying, no way. You're not telling me what to do, because I wanted this to have a natural unfolding, a natural um, blossoming of the book. But now that it's coming into a certain amount of time, I have put that self-imposed because I want to get it out before um, Valentine's Day. So yeah, it's a goal setting, but it's also when you have to be flexible with your goals, realistic.
Well, that makes sense. And it has to be, again, driven from you. But as a motivator, it's good to have some goals set.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think if we're giving people who are listening some tips, do you ever set goals for yourselves? That, like, I mean, I know you were just saying here you are, you wanted it to unfold naturally, which I guess in a book, the way that you write, that could be an integral part of the process. But as a hairdresser, wearing your other hat,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to figure out how you're getting all these people in and what your goal is in terms of revenue that you need to pay the bills, because that's a reality that we all face. So between
Yes.
now and a certain date, your goal is to, would that be a way you look at that?
In a way, like I'm unconventional with the way my brain works. Like, okay, referring to the hair schedule, like you come at 10, I need you at 10, I need you up by 11:30. Next one, blah blah blah. Like, but I've never been a person that would sit down with pen and paper and budget. Even with my bank accounts with bills, I never sat down and crunched numbers. So I never had that goal or that kind of structure. It's always subconscious, knowing, oh, I can't buy that today because I just feel like I can't buy that today. Or, oh, I could splurge on this. Oh, I'm spending a little bit more too much money this month. I'll pull back. So I go on intuition. So that's why I'm saying I'm a little bit unconventional with that. So I do set goals, but I don't know. It's just a different way I do things. So,
Well, basically, the point I was just making is that if we have an idea in our heads about where we want to be at a specific date or a specific time, even if the time is not narrowed down right to the second, but by fall, by spring,
yes.
these are also time limits. This is where I want to be. So
Right.
when we set these kinds of goals, no matter how tight they are or loose they are, it gives us something to work towards. So if we do fall down the rabbit hole, we can catch ourselves because we have a focus and we need to get the broad picture and pull it into focus and
Right.
head down that focus highway.
You get exactly the straight and narrow highway. And, I was a type of student or just a life student in school and in life that would wait till the assignment was done on Sunday night. I'd have to, I wouldn't even sleep. I would get leave the 3 weeks of time that I had to do this project and do it at 2:00 in the morning and get it ready for school. So there is a kind of a do or die type of thing with these goals. And another thing that I've, is procrastination is a big thing I think we all have to deal with. The squirrel getting distracted, procrastination. And I want to add something else here is I call it the comfort death trap. When we, and I write about this in my second book, how when we set off to have a goal, or we want to get something done, we have to avoid the reward system, the self-gratification. We have to delay gratification to keep us going. Because once you get rewarded, it's okay. You have that kind of dessert, and it's like, okay, you pat yourself on the back, and it's like, I don't have to work so hard. You can have this constant hunger to keep you going.
Mm-hmm. I hear what you're saying. When I was in school, I would do what you were saying, leave the assignment till the last minute.
Didn't we all do that?
Yeah, I think so. I would usually do it the Sunday before the Monday that it was due, and you had 4 months to do it, and I did it in one afternoon.
Right.
But I can honestly say that many times when I got right into it, and you're completely immersed in that project when it's due on Monday morning and you're working on it Sunday afternoon, and then I would have a regret that I didn't work on it sooner because there's so much more I would like to have had the time to do, and I didn't leave myself that time. Now, I know we all learn differently and we all perform differently. My daughter's boyfriend is an accountant and saves the studying for his exams by and large till the last minute. And that's how he performs his best. And if I did that, I would never pass one of those tests. I really do need a little bit of time to absorb it. And then I don't
forget by then.
Yeah, and I don't want that feeling of, darn, I wish I had more time. I would have done such a better job, because my reward is a B when I could have had an A. So it was an okay reward, but not a great one. I know there's a lot of people who wait till the last minute and pull off A's all the time, and that's their reward, their biscuit, whatever. And they never learn the lesson. But for me, a B wasn't as good as it could have been.
See, and that's where I'm different. My reward would be, oh, I passed. And that's my reward. It's like, like I didn't have to be the A, because I was like, I had this strange resistance to learning at school. I had a very strange resistance at school. It's like, don't tell me what to, like, I want to learn because I want to learn. Like right now, I've probably did the equivalent of doctorate, bachelor's degrees of studying the way how I research now. But when I'm told to do something, I put a resistance up. So what I did in school, I just got by. So my cookie, my biscuit was, I passed. That's good enough for me. And getting back to what you were saying about the intensity and the regret that you had, I find that even with the hair, we're not going to really go into that right now, but that if a client comes in late and they says, oh, I have to be out by a certain amount of time, which is kind of handcuffs me a little bit, I seem to do better work because my intensity, my focus is that much more intensified.
You mean you're not having discussions about how to save the world like we do when I go to get my hair cut?
We do, but sometimes they're out saving the world and they don't have time for their hair. And I'm like, I don't encourage that at all. I kind of like, that's not cool in a way, but sometimes you have less time to do a client because of whatever circumstances. But I find that I do my best work in that high octane, high pressure situations.
Yeah,
but imagine if we used that. But imagine if we had that intensity through the 4 months or the 3 weeks or whatever before that Sunday before. Imagine we had the whole week for 3-4 weeks to do that intensity, what we could pull off.
Yeah, exactly. That was my point. Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, imagine. So I guess a lot of it boils down to time management. And I know that there was a course being offered through the YRDSB at one point, which is the York Region District School Board, when I was on school council, back in the day. And it was teaching students that were in grade 8 how to study. Meaning how to time manage, how to different study techniques, different motivators. And the powers that be in our school decided that it really wasn't worth it and they weren't going to bother with it. They had too much to do with curriculum and everything. And I thought, what a wasted opportunity, because this is something, a skill set that would travel with these students for the rest of their lives, not just through school, but through work, through family. I mean, we've got December 25th rolling around the corner. And you know what? Every year, Christmas takes me by surprise. How is that possible? It's the same date every year. I mean, I actually sat down last weekend and wrapped a bunch of presents. And the problem with that is that I will definitely forget between now and the middle of December what I've already wrapped, and then I'll probably buy too much. But you know what, I just have to deal with that on my own. But I have a friend who all her presents are wrapped. Her kids live in other places in the world, so she has to get the packages in the mail or courier. Yeah. And her Christmas is done, except for the dinner. Everything is done. Decorations are up. Everything is done. And now she says she gets to just sit for the month of December and enjoy the season.
Okay, but that could be translated into boring as well. It's like, okay, you've done everything. Like now you're waiting for the you're there at school an hour early and you're waiting for everybody to come. I'm like, oh my God, I'd go crazy.
Yeah. And on that side of the fence, I actually have, when I do public speaking, people say, get there 2 hours early, make sure you have plenty of time, do some breathing exercises. And I can honestly say that the times when life gets in the way and I end up coming in 20 minutes before I'm supposed to speak, and I don't really have time for the full regiment of exercises and things, I also don't have time to study the audience, see who I know are going to be the skepticals and the people who stare at you with dagger eyes. And I also don't get the time to get nervous. I'm in my mode. I'm in my zone. I don't have any spare time. Up on the stage I go, and blah, away it goes. And sometimes that's the better way.
Sometimes it is, because you just go do your thing. You do your thing, you get out, and you don't get influenced by, the mind stuff, the stories, the fears, all the what ifs. When you over prep, I mean, for an example, okay, there's a positive about what your friend does. Like they enjoy Christmas, but then you start seeing all the little things, and you start getting like, oh, the magic goes away, in a way. Like, I mean, this is a typical guy thing. We wait till December 24th.
And do the shopping.
We do the shopping, and you end up at Shoppers Drug Mart somehow because they're open longer.
Or Canadian Tire.
And you just do it, right? Now, I'm luckily, I don't have many people to buy for anymore, and we've decided not to give with the adults, just the kids. And I find that I just do it a couple weeks before now. So I found a little sweet spot. But, it's just like when you have too much time to prepare, your mind starts going there to places, and you question yourself, and you're over prepared, and you don't go with the flow. You don't do your thing, as you said.
Yep, I can see that happening. Plus, you know what? I've learned over the years, my dad used to garden all the time, and my mom would say to me, oh, well, your father loves that garden and blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, well, it's hard to tell that he loves that garden. All he does is complain and gripe and groan about how much work it is and, oh, how many weeds there are. There was always something negative to go on about. And
what about the animals?
I found over the years that I finally would turn to him and say, if you can't find any joy in what you're doing, don't do it. Because I can go to the supermarket and I can go to the farm and buy a cucumber. I don't need to eat yours. If it's that much work and that much hassle and such a pain and your knees are sore and your back is sore and your hands are rough, don't do it. But if you love it and you find joy in what you're doing, then do it and bless it with that joy.
Right.
And it's the same with the Christmas thing, I say all the time now, because I look at things differently. The older you get, you look at things in a different way. You and I both know that. Mm-hmm. And I think to myself, maybe there is merit in calling the kids down one at a time and saying, come on, we got to get this done. We've got to wrap. And then we laugh and we talk and we wrap stuff. And it's wonderful. Yes. And yes, it's last minute, but that's part of the fun.
I agree. And, getting back to your father in the garden, sometimes people just like to be complaining, and they have this kind of identity of, I gotta, battle the elements, and that's the joy in a weird way. Maybe some people just love the drama of it. And, who would some people be if they're not to complain? Who are we without our misery? You have to take a look at it that way too. Where,
some people like to be miserable. It's just how they function.
Enjoy it. Right. And it's like, I know with myself, I would love, and getting back to this, I would love to be consistent. And, the tortoise and the hare story, I love to be the tortoise most times, because I'm usually the rabbit or the tortoise. And with my garden, because I'm writing my book, I let my garden go for the last 2 years or last 3 years, just because I was doing other projects as well. And like, oh my God, I got to go there and, fast and just take the weeds out or tie things up on the tomatoes. And like, I would love to go there every day, and then probably even a retirement type of way to do this, but, take the weeds out and just be in joy and be in harmony, like my own Garden of Eden. But it's not, it's in there just like, and then come back in. I'm like, why am I doing this if it's not bringing me joy? But I don't know, there's a rush with that, like getting ready for the assignment the next day on Sunday for Monday morning at 8:00,
I hear you loud and clear. I think with the garden, though, because it requires a certain amount of planning, I mean, you can always look at things and switch things around your perspective so that it suits your purposes. You know, I kept saying, got to get that parsley in. Got to get that parsley in. I'm going to get the parsley in today. I'm going to hang it upside down and dry it in the basement. Everything's going to be great. Anyway, it's now frozen into the snow in my garden. Like I was thinking yesterday, you know what? Maybe that's not such a bad thing. I could freeze it so it's already frozen. I'll just cut it off and put it in bags. Done.
We do. Yes, we do. Alice, yeah, we do these deals. Like I'm smiling because I'm looking out my sliding door backyard and I'm looking at my parsley in the pot where I have all these herbs that I brought closer to the door. Hopefully that the warm bricks would emanate some warmth. And I just harvested most of my herbs recently after that first snowfall. I'm like, oh, they survived. They're hardy now. And, you know, why do we do this? Why do we procrastinate? That's a big thing, is a procrastination. And I don't know. I think we get off on the kind of what do you call that? It's last minute kind of save the day. I think we thrive off of that somehow in our psyche somewhere.
Yeah, maybe.
It's exciting. It's like, you know, preparing and doing things slowly. It's like, okay, I know what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. But we got to get into a kind of a Zen mode of being in the moment and enjoying what is happening, as opposed to rescuing the save the day or kind of like anticipating what's happening and expectation. It's like, let's just be more like the tortoise. But I think the monkey mind, or our mind, our spiritual mind, like, we're not there. We're too irritable. We're too distracted that we can't slow down enough to enjoy. And I'm talking like that on purpose, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. And as soon as you start doing that, don't you find that the whole energy in your body shifts?
Love it. Yes. It's like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be like.
Yeah, this is how I can feel when I'm not under stress.
Right. And the cortisol comes down. Our body goes into a healing kind of parasympathetic mode, and we are healing and we feel great. Things don't bother us as much. But, you know, can we live in that mellowness, or do we need that excitement?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows, right?
Right.
I mean, I think that's why a few years ago I got into, I'm a Nordic pole walking instructor and a Hike Ontario certified hike leader. And a lot of people wanted the hiking for fitness. And they would start at one end with a goal of doing 10,000 steps, or however many they had in their minds. Sometimes it's ridiculous numbers. And being fast with a fast heart rate. And I remember once walking in the Niagara Gorge with some women, and I just saw the most magnificent sight of swirling whirlpools of water. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world, and they were just going to hike right by it because they were keeping their heart rates up and going for a fitness walk. Well, you can go for a fitness walk anywhere in the world. And I thought, what a shame to pass this by and not stop and take a look. So I stopped, took a few photographs, sat on the rock, and just felt the energy of that Niagara River. And to them, it was a waste of time, and to me, it was the best part of the hike. And so I started researching forest therapy. And when I do the forest therapy, it's not about racing out into the woods, getting there as fast as you can, getting back as fast as you can. It's about setting an intention, slowing down, and taking your time in the forest to reap the benefits of forest life. You don't see birds flying at 190 miles an hour. They flitter around.
That's right. They just sit and, you know, it's the same thing when you're out with friends or you're watching TV and you're eating. How often do we really taste our food? We just, I know myself, I get into that kind of opposite state of being relaxed, and my body seems to be a little tense, just a little tense, not much. And I'm shoveling this food in my mouth, just enjoying it, but I'm not really enjoying it. I'm just more. Just there's a goal. I have to, you know, like with the hikers, you got to get it done, right? We got to make good time, and then all of a sudden it's gone. You're like, did I really enjoy each morsel? Did I have the experience of flavor profiles in my tongue, the different parts of my tongue, how it went down my throat? And it's like, no, I wasn't being mindful. I was just, not stopping to sit and watch the whirlpools in the water. Or, you could sit down, but you get the camera out and say, oh, let's take a picture, but you don't really experience it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I like to tie that back into doing work for motivation. We are so goal focused that we kind of miss the little nuances along the way to get there. And a
Yeah.
deadline would, it gives you super focus, but it also, you don't notice certain things sometimes. So you have to sit down and review and, take the 2-3 weeks and not the Sunday night. I'm going back to that again.
All right. Well, we're going to take our first little break here. And when we get back, we'll continue our conversation with Frank. Self-motivation. It's a real challenge these days. We'll be right back. You're listening to Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Stay tuned. We're back on Fresh Waves. If you'd like to listen to this broadcast again or hear some more Fresh Waves broadcasts and podcasts, you can go to our YouTube channel, Fresh Waves Radio. They're all there for your perusal, and we love having you on board. If you have any stories, anything you'd like to tell us, just get a hold of me, Bren, at freshwaves.ca, and we'll try to get you either on the show or I'll direct you to a podcast that may help you in your endeavors. This morning we are speaking with Frank Di Genova. That's a nice Italian name, isn't it?
Yes.
You say
it.
You say it.
Well, there's two different ways you can say it. There's the Italian way and the kind of Anglo-Saxon way.
Okay, so what's the Italian way?
The proper way is Di Genova.
Di Genova. Okay.
Right. Or it's Di Genova. Now, Di or de in French or Italian, it means of, and Genova is from Genova, northern Italy. So basically, my surname is from royalty because the Duke of York, or like they have the whenever you say of, it's kind of a royal thing. And my dad says I think we have some baron or some kind of count or something in our bloodline. But yeah, it's we're from Di Genova. I wasn't born there. My parents weren't born there. They probably just kind of migrated from there. But yeah, that's the long and short of it.
There you go. Well, Frank, thanks for joining us this morning. We're talking about self-motivation. Now, as a self-published author, there's gotta be some tricks you've learned. You're on book number 3 now.
Correct.
And I mean, it's hard to find the space. I'm not going to say the time because we all say, I just don't have the time. I'm so sick of hearing that. But the space within a day, because I know that when I am writing a novel at the moment as well, and I can sit down and think of 15,000 other things that I could be doing instead of sitting down and working on the scene that I'm currently working on. So how did you manage to get this first book and the second book done on top of all the rest of life?
I love how you brought that segue because I was going to say that. I was going to actually add that, even though you didn't kind of lead to it, which is good. So my first book I wrote in 7 months. Now, I owned a salon. Oh
my!
I was living in the Durham region, and I was traveling, sometimes 3 hours a day back and forth with the traffic. So I don't know how I got it done. My first book, I didn't know what I was doing. And I got it done in 7 months. And this was like, I had a couple hours a night to do it. The second book, I was renting a chair, so I had less obligations. It took me about 9 months to do because there was a lot of research and a lot of statistics and stuff. So I got it done. Now, with this book, I mean, COVID made you stay at home, right? So I had all this time. And it's interesting how I had way more time, but it's taken me longer to do this now. So you make the time. I don't believe like some things like when they say, "Oh, that costs too much." It's like no, it's like you don't want to invest in it. If you really want something, you get it done, and that is just proof of what happened with my first book when I had no time to even do anything. Like I have my house. I'm a householder, and I'm living alone with it, so I had to do the chores as well on top of that. So we have time. It's priorities and goal setting and expectations and all that. So
Yeah, expectation. That's a word I haven't heard you use thus far this morning. What do you mean by
yeah.
expectation?
Expectation. So that's a good question. You almost stymied me here.
That's hard to do
um,
because you and I talk a lot.
we do, and I'm still thinking about the word that you use of your perusal for podcasts. I love that word. I just stuck on that. So, expectation is to me is um, what you want to accomplish. It's part of the goal setting, I think, where you expect to you put some deadlines on there and you expect to meet them. It's almost like you have to meet them. Um, so yeah, that's what I'm going to say right now.
Okay, so I would think of expectation as more of what we expect of ourselves and what we expect of others. So you had this editor, and your expectation was that you would tell her when you were ready, that you would give her this book, and you expected that within a few weeks or something that it would be finished. But I think the one thing, when you said about COVID, the one thing COVID has taught us is our expectations and the expectations of the world around us are two completely different things. And we can't let the expectations of others stymie us. We've got to
Right.
have this flexibility and resilience now that we've never had to have before. My daughter's redoing her kitchen, and she expected that it would be done in a week. Well, it's on week 3, and it's still not done. And the range that they wanted is back ordered. Her expectation was 6 weeks. It may be 6 months before she gets it. So,
Yes.
these things have come to try us.
Yes, and expectation. Whenever we have expectations, it typically and always usually leads to disappointments where we want things to happen a certain way, and as we know, with life, it never does. And I think instead of we should expect things in a surprisingly ways, like without having specificity. I can't even say that word. Being specific.
Specificity.
Specificity. That's a specificity. And allowing things to happen as they may. So being excited, expectantly excited to whatever unfolds, as opposed to having it done a certain way. So, for an example, when I was with this editor, thank goodness that I didn't give in, because the book changed so much from that time, and it evolved to a way that I would have been happy with the way I would have presented it then if I had just finished it. So there's things at work that are beyond our control. That thank God that we're the flow of it. It's everything evolves the way it has to if you get out of the way at the same time as trudging forward. Charging forward.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's one thing I'd like to discuss in terms of self-motivation, and I think it can be a motivator, but it can also be something that stymies you and you just can't move forward, and that's fear. And I think all entrepreneurs have a slight element of fear.
Absolutely. Interesting that you said that, because this book is going to trigger a lot of people. My first 2 books were like, there, this is nice. Like, I don't want to rock the boat. I'm giving you my perspective, and you don't have to agree with it. And it was all like nicey nice. Now this, I'm going to be out there, and I'm going to be challenging a lot of beliefs. So, was I sabotaging myself to not get this thing out? Perhaps the being judged, being attacked, having to stand up for my belief. Like, I had to evolve as a person to be able to write this book now, because I wouldn't have been able to do it before because of the fear and to be judged. I'm like, let's say, people are afraid of success as well as being afraid of failure. Do we have the imposter syndrome? Oh, am I going to, sustain this, or am I going to be called out, or I'm going to be judged, or am I going to fail? Like, it's a lot of fear.
Okay, so how do we conquer our fear? Do we stare it straight in the face?
Absolutely. Let it consume you, feel it, and then go through it. Because, whenever we ever have an experience, it's never the time that it happens. It's always before it happens and after it happens. Even with happiness or elation, when something's happening, you're just in it, and it's the aftermath. How you feel about like the expectations before. We either get afraid or excited. When the actual event is happening, we're just in it, and then after it's like, oh my God, wasn't that crazy, or wasn't that scary, or so we just got to move through it.
Okay, but that's easier said than done, I think.
Oh, of course it is.
Okay, but that's, again, like we said, easier said than done. I mean, you're going to stand there and watch the raging river in front of you and think, okay, I'm just going to plow through it. I mean, there are certain things that you are naturally afraid of because it's good to be afraid of them. Don't walk off of the third-story balcony. It's not a good thing. Be afraid of that height. Be afraid of fire. Be afraid of blah, 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 blah. So when we're moving forward and we're afraid of something, could we turn it into a positive? I mean, like we were saying before about our perspective, and maybe it's the time to give it pause, take a look, and say, okay, well, what am I actually afraid of?
Yeah, but I mean, fear paralyzes us. So I don't think we have rational decisions when we're in a fearful state, because our critical thinking goes offline. Now, we're naturally afraid of falling and loud noises. Everything else is learned, I believe, or through experientially, the fire, the this, the that. Fear of loud noises and of falling are innate. I really think, Bren, the rest are learned.
I love the way Richard Branson puts it when he says his lack of education, in that he doesn't have a university degree in business from, some fancy university. He said the one thing that he missed out on with that education was learning what could go wrong. So he went ahead and did all of these things that other people would have said, holy mackerel, do you know that that's only got like a 5% chance of success? But he didn't think of it that way. He went at it because he never learned what could go wrong. So he didn't know.
Ignorance is bliss.
Sometimes.
And I think it was Bill Gates or somebody said that success, but this is the other side of it. Success is the worst teacher. So things have to go wrong to learn. And like, I'm just challenging that point a bit in a complimentary way, where, if you focus on, I think it was a certain driving school at a certain car company. They teach you how to not focus on the targets of getting in a car crash. It's like driving school, where you have to not pay attention to them. You look for the open spots. Where when we focus on the negative, we bring it about to be. Like we focus on it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, with Branson, it's like you don't know that there's failure, so you're naive and you actually get it done. It's not even in your field of what could go wrong, because we have a thing called the RAS in our brains, a reticular activation system. And, it's like when you buy a car. You've never seen that car before, but once you buy a car, you see your car everywhere, where before you didn't notice it. So your brain will go to where it's, where it's known. Like, if you didn't put it into your RAS, it's not a part of your reality, so you don't bring it on, so you won't fall into those pitfalls. That's not the case always, because I mean, if you're going to walk off of a cliff thinking there's, you got to be realistic too.
Yeah, and that's again goes back to the point about resilience. Maybe if we're aware of the pitfalls, and we should be a little bit nervous of them. But then we've got to put on our brave hat and say, okay, I need to be brave right now and just give this a go. I think there's a lot of people who, I call them the dining room table entrepreneurs, that sit at the dining room table and think of all the wonderful things that they could do in their lives, that the beautiful ideas, and oh yeah, well that was my idea. Yeah, that guy who invented that pot that goes around the post in the middle of your table when you've got the umbrella up. I thought of that 15 years ago. It should be mine. Well, no, it shouldn't, because you didn't act on it and he did.
You didn't do it. Exactly.
So it's motivating yourself to be the doer and not just the thinker, not be that dining room table entrepreneur.
Right. And that's the whole thing. It's, knowledge is only, they say knowledge is power. No, knowledge with action is power.
I guess that's why they
Right.
call it an action plan. When you set out to
Ooh,
accomplish
yes.
some things, you maybe don't call it goals, call it an action plan. Not, I want to be there in 15 months, but what am I doing to get there?
Yes. There was a very successful man, a client of mine, that unfortunately he passed away. Brilliant man. And his methodology was to write down your goal. And instead of saying, what do I do to get there? He would work backwards from the goal. He would have a goal in sight, let's say 10 steps. And step number 9 was, how do I get to that 10th step? And he would work backwards of everything that you needed to accomplish until it stopped at just the dining room table discussion.
Wow.
It was brilliant. And I thought, I have to use that, but I never have. I never did that. But I'm thinking, oh, that's brilliant.
Are you still sitting at the dining room table?
I'm actually sitting at the right dining room table right now, talking to you. Okay. Maybe I should just turn around and look at the frozen parsley in the back and say, okay, that was I should have got that 15 years ago. I should have brought that 15 days ago back in the house, not 15 years ago, to do that widget.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. It's a interesting way of looking at it. I like that. Work back from the goal in an action plan, because sometimes I think that it's overwhelming for people, even if they are entrepreneurial spirits. It's overwhelming to start at 0, look at 10, and say, "Oh my goodness, how am I ever going to get there?"
How do I get there?
So what does 10 look like? And now look at step 9. What does step 9 look like to get to 10? That's a really cool way of looking at things.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm glad that we share that with your listeners. I'd like to add here. I wanted to share this with you. When I was doing my first book tour, because I did the whole bunch of chapters in Indigo, and there was a staff member, and that does a lot of book signings, and she was with a lot of authors, like famous authors, and I asked her a question. I said, "Can I ask you a question?" She said, "Sure." I said, "What do successful authors all have in common?" Because I want to learn. I'm a newbie. I'm just green here.
Mm-hmm.
And she looks at me like, "Wow, what a good question." And she says, "Persistence, perseverance, courage, just a nonstop go, go, go." And I have that. Like, I'll be like gnawing on a bone until it's gone, almost obsessively sometimes. And I've done that in destructive ways, but also when I get on something, I don't stop. I forget to eat. I've been ordering more Uber now because I have no time to cook, which gets expensive, which is not good.
Well, then that's a motivator, isn't it? Because now you need to make the money on your book to pay for all the food that you ordered while you were writing it.
So I get bread and cheese or some frozen stuff, and just do that now. So it's persistence. It's going through the fear. It's just getting back when you fall down.
Yeah. Yeah. That Wayne Gretzky quote of, you will miss every shot you don't take.
Yeah, I love that saying. It's so great. Babe Ruth struck out more than any other baseball player.
Yeah, absolutely.
So people are afraid to take action. They're at 0 and they want to get to 10. It's like, well, you got to start swinging.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, a lot of times in our society, you sit down, you watch a movie. And the movie may be about some entrepreneur who started out as the clerk in the mailroom and ended up being the CEO of the company. And in an hour and 20 minutes, or whatever the new formula is for the length of a movie, you see this man's life laid out before you. And we get these bites of things. Nobody sits down and reads War and Peace anymore. They want the book in less than 300 pages. And they want the idea now. And they want things now. And they see some woman standing in Australia saying how she's making all this money with her online business and she can work from anywhere in the world. What they don't see is the grunt work that went into it before this started. They don't see the fear. They don't see the scrounging. They don't see the attempts that failed. And they don't get that feeling that comes with actually taking the action. And, you know, they don't see the person sitting down and making their action plan. And they think it's easy. And it's not easy.
Yes. It's not easy. And yeah, we just want an instant fix. We're a drive-through returnable society where we want it now. And people do not want to go through the hardships of it. I mean, when I was, my father was living with me for a bit because his condo was being delayed even more. So where he was living, he had to leave. So, and I was writing my second book and he goes to me, "You still doing that?" I'm like, "This is not writing an email, Dad." You know, I mean, he couldn't believe the grunt work and going through all the mental blocks and all the hurdles and, sometimes you get sick. Sometimes you don't feel like doing it. You get distracted down the rabbit holes and that. It's people don't see that. They just want that instant lottery winnings. They don't want to work for the money or for the goal. They just want it now. Push the button on the microwave and it's done. Bing. Even with dating, they don't want to do the work. Oh, we can get divorced. We got an argument. Like, it's weird. It just, we're not in a good space as a society.
Well, I know that we're running out of time on Freshwaves, as we often do. And we will do a show about your new book just before you launch, and that will be sometime in December.
Awesome.
But I would like to give people a little sneak, maybe. What is your new book about?
Okay.
Just a sneak.
The sneak is it's on relationships and what not to do. It's not going to be this, come hither, like I'm going to tell you, I'm a guru. Like I've been through a lot of stuff and I've learned what not to do. And I discuss why we are in the relationships or why we're single. And I offer solutions at the end of the book. So the first book is describing the problems that we're facing today and how society is, where the direction it's going. And I offer some cool solutions of how to communicate and how to enhance and ignite the passion back into your relationship. So that's probably more than I've ever said to anyone because it's like, I don't know, I'm keeping this under wraps. But when I do the pre-order launch, it's going to be all over the place.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about, just in the few seconds that we have left, what motivated you to sit down and write this third book?
Insanity. I have to sit down and do this again. It's not for the faint heart. Like it's hard to write a book.
It is.
Everybody says they want to write a book, but no one does it because they realize what it takes. So I feel whenever I learn something in life, I mean, I've come to this planet to help and to teach. I think I'm a teacher in a way where when I learn something and I see that there's a need for it, I want to share. And I think, when I leave this planet, I want to know that I've helped others, that I can actually be kind of a lighthouse or beacon for others. I think when we learn something, we have to share it because if you don't, then why bother? So writing this book, it was cathartic for me because I learned a lot about myself and relationships. So I think every book that I've ever written was for myself to learn and to say, okay, do you know your stuff now? Then let's see what you got, man. Like put it down on paper and see, do you really know it? Have you integrated it? Have you embodied it? So yeah, that's probably the motivations.
It's funny you said that because when they do studies of which countries do the best at math, and, math is very integral to our society and computers and all the rest of the things we do right now. One of the things that they found through these studies is that the countries that actually require the students to write the test, those are the countries that do the best. Because if you can write the test, if you can sit down and think, okay, how do I challenge someone else to learn this? You've actually understood it.
Right.
Isn't that interesting?
That's very interesting.
Now, next time we talk to you, we'll figure out, we'll talk about the motivation to write the book and how it changed as you wrote it. And that's just a teaser for the people who are really curious about self-publishing and wanting to know the process of writing fiction or nonfiction. And
Don't do it.
way to go, Frank. Anyway, thank you for joining us today. We've learned a lot, and I think people have a few tips that they can take away, both about goal setting, how to work under pressure, resilience. Those are the kinds of things that we wanted to share with the listeners this morning. If anyone has any questions, how do they get a hold of you, Frank?
They can go to my website. It's called The Ultimate Journey Awakening to Spirit .com. I also have a podcast under the same name. So if they want to email me, they could email me at Frank Di Genova numerical 1. So it's FrankDigenova numerical 1 at gmail.com.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate having you on the show, and we will do this again in December to launch your book. So for now, we'll leave that little teaser for everyone, and we hope that everyone who's listening has a wonderful day, and we will talk to you again next week on Fresh Waves.